You are now listening to the Fighting Back Podcast, and here's your host, Jessica Travis. Welcome back to a brand new episode, a brand new season of the Fighting Back Podcast. It's Patricio, a.k.a. Rocky, and I'm sitting down here with attorney Jessica Travis. How you doing, Jessica?
I'm good. How are you today?
Doing good. This is our first episode, the Sidebar episode, I should say, in regards to the Fighting Back. But let's get to it, Jessica, with today's episode. What are we talking about?
We're talking about restraining orders. Why not?
Have you actually had to deal with a restraining order, like personally?
So I've never personally had to have a restraining order against someone.
That's good.
As I was a petitioner, but I have helped a lot of people with restraining orders over the years.
And tell us, what does a restraining order actually mean and what does it do?
Yeah, so in Florida, we call them injunctions. We don't really call them restraining orders. A lot of different states have different terminology for it. So I think everybody the common terminology is restraining order. But in Florida, we call them injunctions. Okay. And there are different types of injunctions depending on different situations.
So one doesn't just cover everything. There are different types.
Correct. So depending on each injunction has different requirements depending on the relationship of the parties and what's going on in the case.
Okay. So give us a breakdown, like how many types are there?
There are 5 types of injunctions total.
All right. Let's start off with the first one.
Okay. So the most common one would be the domestic violence injunction.
Okay.
So I think that's what a lot of people think of when they think about restraining orders or injunctions. And a domestic violence injunction is for anybody who is a spouse, a former spouse, if you're living together as a family, if you have a child in common, or you're related by blood or marriage, so long as you've lived together as a family.
Okay.
Those are the types of people and parties that can have a domestic violence injunction.
Now, when filing for a domestic violence injunction, like it helps if you have like police records, witness statements, things like that?
So you don't necessarily need that. For a domestic violence injunction, the only thing that you have to show or prove is that you are a victim of domestic violence or you're in imminent danger of becoming a victim.
And when you say imminent danger, like, can you give a little more detail on that?
Yeah, imminent danger basically is just that there is reason for you to believe that you will be a victim of domestic violence. Something's going to happen to you really soon.
So kind of like if someone's threatening you or saying that they're going to do something kind of thing, right?
Correct. And you have to remember, too, violence is not just a punch or a hit or something like that. Violence can be assault, so threatening to do harm. It can be a battery, which is actually hitting you or causing you some type of physical harm. It can be sexual battery. It can be stalking, kidnapping, false imprisonment. So there's a lot of different what we think of as criminal offenses that can be considered violence for this domestic violence injunction.
So when an injunction is filed, that's not a criminal case, right?
Correct. It is a civil case. It is asking the judge to order that the other person not have any contact with you, stay away from you. Don't call, don't text, don't come near you, where you work, where you go to school, things like that.
I'm already thinking about 15 different people I'd like to put an injunction against, but of course, there's not enough grounds for that. But give us another type of injunction that, or restraining order that there is.
Yeah, so the second most common type of injunction that we have in Florida is the stalking injunction, or an injunction for protection against stalking.
Okay.
So with stalking, there has to be 2 or more incidents have to occur. So it can't just be one. You have to show that there's at least 2 incidents. And you have to show that in these incidents, there was some type of contact for the sole purpose of harassment. So there can't be any legitimate purpose for this contact. It has to be at least 2 instances of some type of harassment.
Now, when it comes to like harassment specifically, like, is it just like calling, texting? Like what falls into that umbrella?
It can be a lot of different things. For example, cyber stalking and cyber harassment can be one of them. So, going online and contacting the person through social media or any of those website platforms can be considered stalking. Assault, battery, injuring or killing a family pet. There can be a lot of acts or something people can do that can be considered stalking. It just has to be for the purpose of harassment.
Okay, so just because someone leaves a mean comment on your Facebook doesn't constitute like a cyber stalking.
Not necessarily, but especially when it comes to stalking, the answer really is it depends.
Okay.
Because the court looks at the behavior of the person to determine why are they doing something? Is the point, are they trying to harass you? Are they trying to stalk you? So they look at everything that person has done. They look at the relationship and your prior history with the person to really determine if it falls under stalking and if there are grounds to issue an injunction for protection.
Okay. So we've already covered the domestic violence. We've covered stalking. Now you said there were a few more. What are the other ones?
So the other one's dating violence, I think, is the next most common one.
I would never date violence. She sounds crazy.
Okay. So a dating violence is similar to domestic violence. But in this one, you have to be in a relationship for the past 6 months when you file the petition. Okay. And it has to be a romantic or a sexual relationship. It doesn't apply to friendships or casual acquaintances or things like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. So nothing casual. Has to be an established a relationship of more than 6 months.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And then the grounds for it, there has to be imminent danger of being the victim of violence. So one of the little nuances that I find fun, because I'm kind of a legal nerd, is with domestic violence, you either have to prove that you are a victim or you're in imminent danger of becoming a victim.
So kind of like in fear for your life.
In fear for your life. But with dating violence, you don't just have to prove that you are a victim. That's not enough. You have to show that you are in imminent danger of becoming a victim for the first time or again. So you have to go to that extra level of, even if something may have happened in the past, the proof is that you've got to prove there's imminent danger of you becoming the victim of violence in the future. So it's, I think, kind of a higher standard.
So would witness statements or character statements of the individual help out in filing this kind of injunction against someone?
So what kind of evidence that you need to prove
You
imminent
took the words
danger?
right out of the mouth. Thank you.
Right. That's the tough part, right? Because it depends on a lot of things. In order to have an injunction issued for your protection, you have to go through an evidentiary hearing, which means you have to find evidence that meets the rules of evidence and that qualifies and it is admissible. And so that's really those kind of legal technicalities that you have to go through with an attorney to determine what kind of evidence do I need? What kind of evidence will the judge look at in court? But that dating violence, I think it defines violence the same way. So assaults, batteries, sexual batteries, stalking, kidnapping, false imprisonment, all of those types of violence. But the difference is you really have to prove that fear of imminent danger that's going to happen to you.
Gotcha. So for those listening, if you have questions and if you feel that you might benefit from this or need to move forward with something like this, 407-344-4837 or fightalaw.com. Send your questions to help@fightalaw.com. We'll definitely be more than happy to answer them on the air on an upcoming episode. But continuing forward with the levels and types of injunctions, what's another one?
So the fourth one is repeat violence.
Repeat violence.
Repeat violence. So
Repeat violence.
This doesn't repeat.
You see, okay. Gotcha.
So this type of injunction, you don't have to have any special relationship with the person, right? Because
Okay.
we talked about domestic violence, we talked about dating violence. This can be two people with no relationship at all. What qualifies, though, is there has to be 2 or more instances of violence.
Okay.
And one incident must be within the 6 months of filing the petition.
Crazy question. Why that within 6 months?
Because that's the requirement that the legislature has determined on these statutes.
Okay.
They have specifically said it. But essentially for repeat violence, and we'll have an example that probably would never happen, but kind of to make it simplified. Mm-hmm. So if you walk down the street and somebody came up to you and punched you, right? Mm-hmm. don't know this person, never met him before, can't get an injunction. Now, if they come up and they punch you again, and that second time that they've punched you is in 6 months, you can now file an injunction. And you can say, Judge, not only did they punch me once, but they punched me a second time. I think they might punch me a third, so I would like an injunction against them to keep them from punching
So
me.
I'm in fear for my life, or I'm in fear for my safety because this individual, he has repeatedly done this act towards me. Okay.
Exactly.
All right. So in regards to like repeat violence, I'm thinking back because I had a friend who had gone through a situation where she had met someone online, thought he was a cool dude, and next thing you know, was not a cool dude, was a little bit off, and she cut it off after a first date. However, this individual did not get the message, did not understand that like, oh, she's not responding back, she's not interested. No, he persisted to call her, show up to her place of work, even had the audacity to drive by her house.
Yeah.
So like for an individual like that, even though he's not physically harming her or anything like that, what kind of injunction would that fall under?
So most likely that would be stalking.
Okay.
Because your repeat violence really has to be that there is violence that happened. Assault, battery, kidnapping, false imprisonment, and it already happened twice. And so you're afraid of the third time. But something that what you're talking about, that's why really stalking injunctions are the second most common injunctions, because it's not that this person has physically hurt her. They haven't punched her twice. It's that there's stalking, there's harassment, there's continued contact when I'm assuming she's saying something of, please don't contact me anymore.
Yeah.
And then they just continue to contact her with no legitimate purpose. That's why the stalking injunction is one of the more common ones.
Okay. Makes a lot more sense now. And now we've covered 4. You said there was another one. What's the last one we need to know about?
Yeah, the final one is not as common, but it does come up, and that's sexual violence. So any person who's been a victim of sexual violence can apply for an injunction for protection. So that person who has sexually violated them cannot contact them anymore. There's a list of what sexual crimes are included in the statute. One of the big caveats is either that the person has to report it to law enforcement and has to work with law enforcement and cooperate with law enforcement during the criminal proceeding. That's one of the requirements.
Is it safe to say that a sexual violence injunction case would probably have connected to it a criminal case?
Correct. Well, it has to be because they have to report it to law enforcement and they have to cooperate with any investigation from law enforcement.
Okay.
Or the other alternative is, for example, somebody committed a sexual battery or a crime against a person and they went to prison, 20 years ago when these injunctions really weren't in place. And now they're getting released from prison. So a person can apply for a sexual violence injunction if the person is being released from prison within 90 days.
Okay. So we've gone over the types of injunctions. What does one who's listening right now who feels that she qualifies or he qualifies under one of these categories, like what's the procedure? How do they move forward with getting an injunction?
Yeah, so the biggest thing is filing the petition and filing the petition properly with the proper supporting documentation, filing it under the right technicality and the right legal basis. That's really the hardest part, because if you don't file the petition properly, the court's just going to deny it and that's it. That's really the most important part. And that's why I really recommend if somebody thinks that they qualify for an injunction and needs that protection to call. Because we can go through the facts, their individual facts of the case and say, okay, yes, you do have a basis under this statute, under this injunction to qualify. Here's all the documentation that we need, and we can help them through that process. If a petition is filed properly and meets all the qualifications and meets all the criteria for an injunction, the court can issue a temporary injunction within a couple of days.
Ooh.
And that gives them temporary protection until the other person is served and there is the formal court hearing where evidence is presented.
And as we're wrapping up, one final question. If an injunction is filed and the individual makes contact with the petitioner, like what happens to that, to the respondent?
So the respondent has to be served. So the respondent has to know that there is an injunction against them.
Okay.
Once the respondent knows that there's an injunction against them, if they make any contact with the petitioner, they could be looking at going to jail.
Ooh.
And a criminal offense. Absolutely.
Important information, great information. Once again, Jessica, thank you so much for your knowledge and expertise on this one. 407-344-4837 or go to fidolaw.com. Join us next week as we sit down with attorney Oscar Salgado to get more detailed insight in regards to the world of injunctions. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you guys next week. Thank you so much for listening. If you found this episode helpful or informative, don't forget to follow us on social media and share this podcast with your friends. Like, follow, subscribe so you never miss a show, and help others know their rights by spreading the word. Your support helps us keep fighting back. The information provided in the Fighting Back podcast is for general informational purposes only and is not intended as legal advice. Every case is unique and should be reviewed by a qualified attorney who can provide guidance based on the specific facts and circumstances of your case. Listening to this podcast does not create an attorney-client relationship with Fight Law or any of its attorneys. If you are facing any legal issue, we strongly encourage you to consult with a licensed attorney directly.